Good afternoon, my name is Dewan Gay, and this is with the Arundel Patriot. This year we decided to try something new, and we're doing candidate interviews. We're doing in-depth conversations with the candidates, getting to know them, getting to know their platform. And first up is Lisa Rodvien, candidate for County Council in District 6. So how does it feel to be a candidate?
Well, it's pretty exciting. Although I have to admit I'm doing a lot of the same things that I've been doing for a long time. I've been involved in advocacy for education actually since I was kind of a kid in a lot of ways. And I used to practice law in the field of education law, and then I ultimately became a teacher where my day job is teaching, but a lot of my time outside of school is getting involved in education policy and advocating for my schools and my colleagues and my kids. So I'm doing a lot of the same things now that I'm a candidate.
Yeah. So you mentioned college. So how was that process, getting into college and deciding to go to law school? What inspired you?
Well, I think when I was in college, I didn't really have a clear picture of what kind of career path I wanted to, but I just hadn't been listening to the voice inside of me that was screaming kind of loudly. After I graduated, I started listening a little bit more carefully and realized that my civil rights heart wanted me to be involved in a lot of the fights that are important for our generation. And so I decided to go to law school, and I went to Catholic University right in Washington, D.C., and I'm proud to say I graduated magna cum laude.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty exciting. And then after I graduated, I worked for a judge in Washington, D.C., in the D.C. Superior Court, and I worked in the felony division. And in D.C., the felony division is divided up into Felony 1 and Felony 2. Felony 1 is affectionately known, if you can believe it, as rapes and murders. Felony 2 is drugs and guns. So I was in drugs and guns, and one of the things that really struck me was how compelling the stories of the different defendants that came before our court were, and usually compelling in an extremely tragic way. And so this, in my mind, tied back very much to the education piece, because most of our defendants were very young. Yeah. They were, the vast majority were young men. They were generally in their, early 20s, sometimes a little bit older, but they had life circumstances that led them to, to be in this courtroom on whatever particular day it was that were not pretty. And a lot of what I was thinking was, well, what interventions could have helped these young people get to their early 20s and be in a better place than they were, where I was seeing them. And Absolutely. I was very, very lucky to work for a compassionate judge who really believed in not just throwing the book at them and locking them up forever, but really doing a lot of rehabilitation and working towards getting a lot of these young men on a better path.
Yeah. So do you think that will translate into your campaign, and if you win, into your time in office, looking at certain issues with compassion, like the opioid issue, issues or problems that are being had in sometimes more urban areas with African American communities? Will you look at those situations with compassion, or how do you plan to handle some pretty chaotic situations that tend to happen here in Anne Arundel County?
Absolutely, and I think I've learned some of the same lessons as a teacher. Every time you have a kid that's acting up, and acting up in whatever way that manifests itself, whether that's just being totally disengaged and maybe not ever being disruptive in class, but just never being connected to class, or a kid that is really being disruptive and angry, and the different kind of ways that experiences and emotions can manifest themselves for young people. There's the one lesson that I've learned is that there's always a story, and it's a story that you need to listen to if you want to get to the root of the root of the problem and really help a young person get their life on a better path. So absolutely, I feel like that's an experience, or that I have a string of experiences. I've been teaching for 12 years now, 8 years in Anne Arundel County. My first years in the county were at Annapolis High School, and so to me, I feel like even though I'm not in Annapolis High School anymore, I have a really good understanding of what the Annapolis schools cluster, what kind of challenges kids are coming to school with, and how we can work to better support kids. A lot of it, I think, comes down to we literally need more adults in the building. over the past decade, the student enrollment in Anne Arundel County has increased by about 10%, and actually a little more than 10%. But the number of teachers in Anne Arundel County Public Schools has not come close to keeping pace. The number of school counselors has not come close to keeping pace. And while during that same period of time, we have more kids coming to challenges when you look at numbers like students receiving free and reduced meals.
Yeah.
So, to me, that means you have more kids coming from communities or families that are economically on the edge. And, we're seeing the increase in the need, but we're seeing the decrease in providing services and providing support for kids. So, to me, there's a very direct connection between that and a situation like we have in Eastport, where there's been an uptick in youth violence, and last year we had more than one homicide of very young people. I've been personally impacted. I've had 2 former students shot, and I think they are very possibly people that you know as well. Both of those young men survived, thank goodness.
Absolutely.
But there was another young woman that I taught that was murdered, that was brutally murdered, and I think there's different ways that we could support kids. They really are. When you're talking about, people in their young 20s, you're talking about very young adults, and I just know that, support from the right people can make all the difference.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I know that. I don't want to. I don't want to turn this interview about you, but that you can name people that made a big difference in.
Absolutely.
And just helping you.
It makes it work.
Move in a positive direction.
Yeah.
So the more people, the more adults that we can bring in, the better we're going to be for our communities. And this. I think a lot of times we frame this in terms of students of color, but I think that there are there are different stresses that impact, that impact all students.
Absolutely.
We've got a lot of bullying going on in schools. We've got students dealing with parental divorces. We've got the opioid epidemic. There are students that have seen, family members, parents, or siblings overdose, and it's a very traumatic experience. And then to try and figure out, well, how are you going to move forward?
Yeah.
The kids need support. So
Absolutely.
that's really the reason I decided to run. Is I just feel like we're falling short in that area.
Yeah. That's amazing.
In the schools. So that's why I'm sitting here.
Yeah. So what do you what's something that you're beginning to take away from campaigning? You've been campaigning for a while now, and I believe, has it hit the 1 year mark yet?
It has hit the 1 year mark.
mark.
I've been doing this for about a year. One of the things that's really refreshing to me, now granted, because I have a primary, I'm generally meeting with Democrats at this point.
Yeah.
I will obviously expand and have conversation with independents and Republicans, because I feel like at the local level, we're really all concerned with the same issues. At least I hope we are. But one of the things that's very heartening is how widespread the concern for all of these same issues that I am raising seem to be. I mean, I'm not raising things and people are like, nah, I don't care about that. No, people really do care about it, and so that's very heartening to me. And I hope that that's not just District 6, which, as I'll just say it in case there's any questions, the District 6 for the County Council includes the entire city of Annapolis. It includes the entire Annapolis Peninsula, like Bay Highlands, Arundel on the Bay, and Bay Ridge, and then it includes up to Crownsville, up to Harold Harbor Road. So it's a pretty big district, and across the district, I hear a lot of people saying, yes, these are important things. And, while obviously education and, the welfare of young people in our county is the reason I am sitting here, it is the reason that I decided to run for office. There are other things that I think are really important to make our communities better places for people to live. We have some serious environmental concerns. And my husband and I, in particular, my husband's former military, and we moved here when he separated from the Army in 2010. And one of the reasons we moved here is because it's beautiful. I mean, this is a beautiful place to live. It's a beautiful city with beautiful people. Absolutely. And we're right here on the Chesapeake Bay and the Severn River and the South River. And, come the more the time that I've spent here, I've learned that, those things that make this place so special and unique are in jeopardy. We have a lot of water quality issues. I talked to longtime residents that have been in the community their whole lives, especially older folks. For example, I met a woman who was in her early 80s who grew up on a creek just off the South River, and she said, yeah, when I was a little kid, I could go down and I could, grab a fish. Literally with her hands, grab a fish, get some bait, grab a fish out of the water, and that was dinner. And I don't think you could do that in most places. She said the water was like crystal clear. I don't really think I've ever seen that. Maybe in a few little creeks way up, further upstream when there hasn't been a lot of rain and whatnot. But that's the bar we need to be working towards.
What are some things that you'd like to see done in the environment? I think that we're in a pickle when it comes to the environment because we have the technology, we have the resources, but we're just not using them sometimes. We're not fully investing in our environment. So if elected, how do you plan to tackle those issues? What are some tactics that you plan to use to help get those things done in District 6?
I think there's we're lucky. There are good options. If we have a council that is ready to embrace them, there are good options available to us. Right now, the fines for developers who are in the process of constructing and creating runoff are not really sufficient to serve as a deterrent. They really are just more like a cost of business. And we need to set fines at a level that will actually that will actually have some teeth and hold people accountable for, causing a flood in someone's, in a neighboring property's yard or a person's home, or in a community waterway. So I think that's one angle we need to do. We need to be much more strict about zoning modifications. And variances. We need to be mindful that all of those things, there's reasons that we put, there's a reason that the community developed the general development plan by using the small area plans, because we had a very specific vision, and that was community built. And so why would we allow, developers are generally from outside of the community, and even if they're from the community, they're not really representing the whole community. Yet we have these documents like the general development plan and the small area plan that very much reflect the wishes of the community. And so we should be holding developers to those plans and not, allowing modifications and variances that basically say, why did we even bother to create these plans?
So another big issue, it's more of a City of Annapolis issue, but it's definitely will impact your district. As you've seen on Facebook, I'm sure, on a ton of social media, we have a huge flooding issue downtown. What will the relationship be with Councilman Lisa Rodvien and Mayor Gavin Buckley in working together to get something done for flooding downtown?
So I feel like we need to be much wiser about that very first space that meets the water in downtown Annapolis. I would love to work with the governor. Hopefully the governor soon. But I would love to work with Mayor Buckley to really get some of those parking lot surfaces transformed into something that will mitigate flooding.
Absolutely.
The natural way of mitigating flooding is wetlands. We've built over a lot of wetlands. We've let a lot of wetlands be filled in. This could be an opportunity to bring back some. We could be talking about things like, repurposing what's currently a parking lot into a park and have much nicer, usable space that would also provide some flood mitigation. On that same line, I'd also like to, with respect to parking, one of the things I was really surprised after living, like I said, I'm still a relative newbie. So, there's things
adopted to the city.
I'm adopted. I also say I adopted this city. Like, we were very deliberate. We chose this place, and so I feel like in a way I made a special bond with the place. I actually, that's not. Ask me a story about the first time I saw Annapolis on the map, way back when I was in college, but that's a separate story. But yeah, I feel an affinity for this place because it had so many of the things that I wanted in a hometown that I said, hey, let's go here. And my husband was like, yeah, I think you're right. Let's do this. So One of the things that really surprised me, though, is that as small as a city as Annapolis is, I'm sorry, that's my dog Luna. She's making sure that the mail carrier doesn't attack us while we're doing this interview, so don't mind her.
We need protection
yes,
here.
we do. She's very sweet, but she's looking out for us. Anyway, I was really surprised to learn how difficult it can be to even just walk from here, where right now we're sitting in my house in Admiral Heights, and even just 2 miles, it's less than 2 miles down to City Dock, and there's not really a single safe path to get there on a sidewalk. Yeah. On a bicycle, there's a lot of tough crosses, awkward intersections, and places where there's really not a good place for a bike to go. And we're the right size city to build a biking infrastructure. And that can ease traffic concerns. It can ease environmental concerns. It can ease our carbon footprint. It can, if we build that infrastructure, we will make life easier for seniors to be able to get around. We'll make life easier for folks that don't have cars at all to get around. Yeah. If we have just a more walkable and more bikeable community. And I want to commend. I know the current councilman Chris Trumbauer has worked towards legislation, or has actually helped pass legislation towards the concept of complete streets, yeah. Which basically, would set forth that when you are when you're building a new street, you want to think about not just cars, but also pedestrians and cyclists. And I would like to take the next steps and implement as much of that as we possibly can, because Annapolis should have that. We're the right size to make that work well. When my husband and I bought this home, I was still working at Annapolis High School, and it's less than 3 miles from here. And you might have figured this out, I love to bike. I did it for a few months and then realized I was taking my life into my hands, and I stopped. Yeah. And I think about, okay, I'm a teacher and I can afford a car and parking and all that, but how great would that be for young people to be able to bike to school and yeah. not have to, to know they have a safe path to get to school? Because I know, like, at Annapolis High School right now, there's no activity buses. Yeah. So, transportation, getting to a school that's out on Reaver Road is an issue for kids that want to participate in things outside of the school hours. So I know that there's a lot of things. I mean, I'll try not to get too sidetracked on things that really have to be dealt with at the school level. I know Principal Chittum at Annapolis High School has done a lot to try and find ways to facilitate yeah. kids' participation and involvement in the school, even without that transportation. I think that's amazing that she's doing that. But I think the county can step in and support all kinds of, you get so many benefits by building up your pedestrian and your cycling infrastructure. So I would absolutely like to work on that.
So you touched on transportation and the difficulty. So we've also talked a lot about creating opportunities within our district, creating opportunities within our communities. How do we do that with such a difficult transportation issue, especially those low-income housing, getting to work and creating opportunities for themselves? How can we help them in that step?
Well, since we can't go back in time and make sure that we're not moving, public housing opportunities far away from the center of the city to yeah. begin with. Okay, we have to accept that things are located where they are. But I do think that, we can just be very specific and listen to residents and say, what do you need? Where do you need to go? How well are our current routes matching your needs? And what kind of routes would match your need? What kind of resources? I always think that a great place to start when you have, when you have a concern or you're looking at a problem is asking the people who will be most impacted and say, how could this work better for you? So I think very much starting by just talking to people and finding out what is it that would make your life easier to get where do you need to get to? Yeah. How long does it take you to get there? What would make it easier for you? I've heard suggestions, I think for within the city of Annapolis, again, my idea of having a better walking and biking infrastructure could make a huge difference, for communities where people are, a little bit isolated geographically and don't necessarily have cars. But we also need to improve transit too. If people are Is our transit reliable? When is our routes running on time? Are buses showing up when they're supposed to show up? And so finding out what's working and what's not working, and maybe do some assessment and figure out where are we and where do we need to go from here.
Absolutely. So we'll do three more quick questions,
Okay.
if that's fine with you.
Yeah, this is great.
So one of the bigger issues in our county is the opioid epidemic, and we're seeing something that's new. This time the drug isn't taking over urban areas, it's taking over suburban communities, and it's blown up. So how do we address this issue? How do we tackle this opioid epidemic?
So I applaud the county executive for creating the Safe Stations programs that allow someone who's decided that they need treatment to go and connect with people, whether it's in the police stations or the fire stations, and to try and be connected with treatment. I think one of the shortcomings that we still have to meet is the availability of treatment. When I talk to those that are most involved and most focused on the opioid epidemic, the number one thing that I hear is we need more treatment beds. We need more places for people to get treatment. We also, when I talk to folks in police and fire, they say a lot of the people are coming in on the weekends. Yeah. A lot of the available intake are only available during the weekdays. So there's just some logistical connections that we need to make to connect people with treatment. Because if there's not an immediate place to take someone, then we have a gap. Yeah. And we can't let folks be falling through those gaps. We need to
Absolutely.
Figure out a way to give people a safe place to go until there is a treatment bed ready, or until there is an intake, a place for them to do some sort of intake.
Absolutely. So you are part of a very, very special group, as we've seen on the Capitol. We've seen it all over. This is the year of the woman. So how does that feel to be riding the wave of something that could be very, very special in the election?
I'm excited by it, I have to say. I didn't have anything to do with being born a woman, but at the same time, obviously I've lived my whole life as a woman. And so, as you know, right now we have 7 men on the Anne Arundel County Council, and we are absolutely in need of a wider range of voices. And I think some of the I certainly don't want to dismiss all of the male voices on the county council. We have some excellent voices on the county council, Absolutely. But at the same time, we are lacking a female perspective on things, because we literally don't have one. So if I can bring that to the table, I am happy to do that. And girl power. Go.
So in our last question, how does what happened on the federal level of government impact what will happen here in our county? There's a huge difference in governing, but some of those things will impact us. And how do we tackle that? How do we put it in the hands of our candidates?
Well, one of the beauties of having the system of government that we have in the United States is that we do have multiple layers of government. So, yes, when I go and I talk to people at their doors and in different communities, there is a lot of frustration with what's going on at the national government. And I think what the biggest thing I'm hearing is, let's do what we can at the local level to protect ourselves from some of the ridiculousness that's happening at the national level. Let's be a voice to speak out against some of the rhetoric that we're coming across from the current administration in Washington, D.C., which is unfortunately it's very close. Yeah. But at the same time, we can create something for ourselves here that provides us a lot of insulation for us to have the kind of communities that we want here locally, in spite of that. Yeah. In spite of a lot of that crazy.
Perfect. And just quickly, Joey, do we have any questions from any of our viewers online or? Mm-mm. Perfect. So where could they find you at?
You are most easily able to reach me on my website. It's lisarodvien.com, LISARODVIEN.com, and you can also email me at lisa.rodvien@gmail.com, and I'm happy to connect with you. I'm not hearing from, I hear from some folks, but never as many as I could respond to, so I'm happy to hear questions from folks in District 6 and really beyond. So please reach out. I'm here for you. I truly believe that being a government official that responds and listens to the people she's representing is very important. So know that I'll do that now and beyond.
Perfect. Thank you very, very much for sitting down with us and for having this interview. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you soon.